Joe, thanks for joining us again. Good to speak with you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
So I understand that this is, one of the most remote live cam setups that we have on explore.org. So the first question I have for you is, what is the journey like to get to the tower?
Sure. So it's you've got two options to get out there. You can either take a helicopter or you can take a boat. So I've been out there two times, once in 2019 and then our most recent trip in 2023. So for this trip, the helicopter just simply wasn't in operation, so we took a boat out there. Um, the boat ride, we leave from Southport, North Carolina, and it's about 30 miles long. So it takes, depending on conditions, somewhere around the 2 hour mark. And then once you arrive to the tower, then it's a matter of, okay, well, how do you get onto the tower now? Basically, Richard Neal, who owns the tower, lowers a swing that's connected to a hoist, and you jump from the boat onto the swing, and then he hoists you up onto the tower. And that's how all of our gear is hoisted up into these, they've got these big hoist bags that and each one of them is systematically just raised, and he's got a whole crew there that kind of scrambles to pull it off the hoist, everything out of the way, and makes preparations for the next person who's going to be hoisted up. So it's a very intense operation, depending on conditions. If the water's calm, it's nice, but if it's just a little bit choppy, there's always that chance that you make one misstep and you're suddenly swimming with the sharks.
Yeah, it seems like kind of a wild experience just to get onto the tower. And of course, once you're there, you got all this equipment and the cameras are under the water themselves. So what sort of special circumstances did you and your crew have to consider to install the cameras and get them to work on the frying pan tower themselves and then install them underneath the water with the fish?
So for this one, the biggest special circumstance is the diving factor. I personally am not a diver, so I take with me Mark Muller, who is an expert diver. That is by far the biggest circumstance. And then basically all the work that is done as far as the physical installation of the camera underwater, what we have to do is, while we're up on the tower, we plan it out in extreme detail. We'll run through the plan multiple times. Richard and Mark, they're the divers, so we literally go through every single movement they're going to make sure that they're both on the same page, just because once they're under the water and they're dealing with the cameras and the cabling, there isn't really a chance to communicate in an effective way if, say, I don't know, you have to change something. So, we'll go through literally each movement, and then we'll go through the scenarios. Okay, if this happens, this is what you're going to do, and this is how you're going to communicate it, between the two of you. There's that. There's also the communication with the hoist operator, as far as, we lower the camera assembly down into the water, and then we lower the diver into the water. And there's a piece of communication that has to happen once that diver has the camera disconnected from the hoist. The hoist operator has to know, okay, now it's time to raise the hoist back up to reconnect, say, the dive seat or whatever. And that's very simple. That's just like a little floaty thing that they release, and it floats to the top, and it's fluorescent orange. And once you see that, that means he's all clear. But those little things are very important to make sure that everybody understands the overall safety operation there is just very, very important. More, I would say, than any other location. It's just dealing with diving, dealing with the currents. There's safety ropes that we have. There's a dive flag that we have to lower to notify all of the other boats in the area that we have divers in the water. Then there's a dive boat itself. Typically that's in the water just in case of something, just in case something happens, and there's a boat there for the divers to get to. So just coordinating all of that is just, it's it's a lot to coordinate. There's a lot of people involved. I'd say those are definitely the biggest special circumstances for this particular location.
Yeah, it sounds kind of intense in that way because when you're installing a camera on the land, you can still breathe. If you're doing stuff under the water, you can't breathe when something goes wrong. So there's that aspect of it. And I know some of our audience is going to be curious about sharks, because with there's sharks all through the water there. You showed me some videos, taken from the top of the tower. You can see sharks in the water, and we see sharks consistently on the underwater cameras. So was there anything that maybe Mark did or Richard did or does to kind of reduce the risks of swimming with sharks?
Um, I don't think so. I think it's just something that you're swimming with. I avoid it by simply not being a diver. That works best for me. Um, these guys, they're experienced divers, and from my understanding of it, and I'm by no means an expert, but the sharks seem to just kind of stay to themselves, and they're just there along with all the other fish, and the divers are just yet another kind of thing in the water that they're ignoring. You know, I my theory is, just the size of the people, and once they have all this dive gear on, they're rather large. So I'm assuming that they're probably looked at as essentially another shark. Um, but that question definitely Mark or Richard could probably elaborate on as far as if there's anything special they do, but not from my observations.
Yeah, maybe we'll have the opportunity to ask them at a future point in time about that. But media, uh, I guess, representations of sharks makes them look, like these insatiable, bloodthirsty killers that anytime something moves in the water, they're going to go after. And that's certainly not the case. There's risk involved. They're big predators, of course, but you can, I think, mitigate the risks by, going into the water certain times of the day, or perhaps even moving in certain ways, so you're reducing the chances that you're going to attract their attention. It's like, when I go to Alaska and Katmai, I wouldn't be going there if I thought a bear was going to attack me. Right there, it's risky in a certain sense, but at the same time, there's ways that you can reduce that risk. So interesting
Sure.
stuff there. But of course, uh, the work's not done. Once you get the cameras installed, given that the frying pan tower and the webcams there are so far out in the Atlantic, how do you connect them to the internet?
Sure. So Richard has been able to secure a spot on a very high radio tower that's on the mainland, and the height of this tower is about 1,750 feet, which is really, really high. We have a giant radio dish out there that's about, I think, 4.5 feet in diameter, and we have another one of those dishes on the frying pan tower. So we use a wireless point-to-point link, just like we do our locations. The unique thing about this one is the overall length of it is about 60 miles, because the tower is about 30 miles inland. So this is by far the longest point-to-point bridge that we have on and at any of our sites throughout Explore. And the reason that we have to be so high on the mainland is to, at that distance, then you've got the curvature of the earth that comes into play, and you literally have to get above that. On this tower, at the base of the tower, there's a data center, and Richard has ran fiber about 1,400 feet up this tower and into a network switch that we have at this 1,400 foot level. So that, and then our internet circuit, we have a broadband internet circuit that's located in this data center, and overall the speeds, on average that we get at the tower itself is about 80 megs up and 80 megs down, which is really, really good for that type of connection. So that's made a really huge difference in the overall stability of this location.
Well, that's this has been fascinating to learn about this process and more about the location. It certainly helped me to gain I think a better appreciation of the cameras at the Frying Pan Tower. But one final question for you, Joe, is what's the next adventure on your itinerary for Explore.org?
Well, right now yesterday I shipped 9 boxes up to Anchorage to be shipped over to King Salmon. That's all the brown bear gear. So that's right now I'm gearing up for the brown bears to bring that system back online and do some upgrades, and that's as much as I'll say for now.
All right. Well, no spoilers here, but we are looking forward to it. Joe, thanks for taking the time out of your day to talk with us. Great to speak with you again.
Thanks for having me again, Mike.